This video is sponsored by Amazon Coins. Amazon Coin is a digital currency that is available through the Amazon App Store, where you can download your favorite games. You can purchase Amazon Coins to use it to get several items through the Amazon App Store. Now you might be wondering, why not just spend regular money? You see, Amazon Coins has a nice bonus added to it. The more you purchase, the greater the discount applied to the sale, so you can potentially get more mileage out of the money you spend. For example, if you'd like to get 50,000 Amazon Coins, it's normally at the price of $500. But Amazon Coins has its own discount applied to it, slashing the price down to $400 instead, a 20% discount. There are multiple packs with different discounts, so feel free to take a look and pick what appeals to you. Not only that, but if you buy one of these bundles featured for the Black Friday campaign, you will get an additional $10 credit to spend on Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. This offer is available from November 25th to December 1st, so if you're willing to spend, don't miss out on this chance. In order to get access to Amazon Coins, you must be using the version of the game downloaded from the Amazon App Store. So make sure your current account is bonded beforehand on your current version of the game. Then, after downloading the game from the Amazon App Store, load your account back on to regain your progress. This way, you can now purchase Amazon Coins. So if you're a spender looking for ways to get more out of your money, consider Amazon Coins. This is a pretty useful feature that can help you if you're budgeting, so if you're interested in this, make sure to use the link in the video description as it supports this channel. Thanks again to Amazon Coins for sponsoring this video, and speaking of which, let's get back to it. In the future, there's only one Neo Vision unit I'm interested in, and that's Riser. So I wasn't going to make another video like this because I didn't care about anyone else. Oh, but then they come out with all these cool CG limit bursts. We're at an interesting spot here. We're getting global originals after global originals, and Final Fantasy X has already been announced. But the resurgence of Trials of Mana, even if it's 6 months late, has given hope for all collaborations in the future. So with that in mind, the next banner we might expect features units from Dragon Quest Monsters Super Light. I'm kind of optimistic about this one, since we have had collaborations of Dragon Quest before, and it features my favorite collaboration unit of all time, Slime. It does also have other units, like Lena and Marquis de Leon, with strong wind tag attacks, powerful bolting strike chains, and a critical hit to cap. The pair is especially threatening after they've activated their Super Limit Burst, a self-chaining wind attack which massively raises the damage modifier of their physical abilities. But if you prefer the bosses from Dragon Quest, then maybe you like Zoma, a powerful magic damage dealer with Ice, Bolting Strike, and Chaos Wave Awaken chains. But I hear what you're saying. What if I don't care that Ice is an underrepresented magical element and I just want more Dark? Well, screw you, activate his Brave Shift, you're still stuck with Ice. Granted, his Brave Shift is monumentally stronger, with increased damage modifiers, imperos, and a powerful limit burst that grows stronger with each use. And do you remember how I always make fun of people who don't have the Super Trustmaster Reward of Sora from Kingdom Hearts 3? Well, once Zoma arrives, I'm gonna start making fun of people who don't have his. Shoot, that might include me. The next collaboration Japan saw was from Legend of Mana. And since we actually got Trials of Mana, 6 months late but better late than never, now there's hope! So Elizal is a physical damage dealer that can chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity, with the option of using Light. But you know Elizal, he's such a funny and wacky guy, always want to throw you for a loop, and that's why his Limit Burst uses Wind. His Super Limit Burst is simply a souped up version of his regular burst, but boasts some killer effects to really give the attack an extra kick. Pearl is also in the same banner. Her base form has some incredible abilities like escape and healing herself, because she tends to trip on a pebble off screen. Of course, she's not completely useless, as her normal attack cures status ailments for your team. If you're not convinced to save for her yet, just look at that Limit Burst. For 60 Limit Burst crystals you get, something. But activate your Brave Shift and you'll probably stumble upon story spoilers. But it's not like any of you are going to play Legend of Mana in the future, so I suppose it doesn't matter. Anyways, she's a physical damage dealer that can use fire and light attacks that chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity. Of course, being from the same game as Elizal, it doesn't make sense to make sense, which is why she's secretly a dark damage dealer. Her limit bursts get stronger with each use, and tacks on the ever-helpful Hammer in Peril, finally bringing the long-awaited Sephiroth Hammer meta to life. She also has a one-time and trust ability that's one use only for whatever reason, almost as if they were worried that her base form could actually be really useful. At least they've still got the Sephiroth Hammer meta. Final Fantasy X appears. Yuna arrives to milk the player base of their cash, once again reminding them of the lengths they go to get a pixelated JPEG of a moving sprite, even if the banner is at an inflated premium. But the real question is Yuna actually any good? Yeah. Staff Imperos, niche mitigation, fire, ice, and dark fields for your favorite boy Sephiroth and anyone else who doesn't matter, all this white and green magic which may or may not be useful, and a limit burst that gives your team a powerful Reaper killer and an evoke damage modifier buff. And while you can pair that evoke with other evokers, you can't just forget that Yuna herself is also a evoker. Activate her Brave Shift to evoke whatever this thing is, and bring out the big Spirit Light evoke damage to kill everything in your path. Final Fantasy X doesn't stop there, as it next brings in Riku. She's a physical damage dealer and a supporter that can chain with Bolting Strike. She has a variety of additional effects: killer buffs, status ailments, HP barriers, boost to the limit burst gauge fill rate, alongside Provoke, a full revive, and fixed damage. Her green magic lets her imbue lightning or light onto your team, and amplify their elemental damage, but she doesn't have a light imperil. Her limit bursts take a blend of damage and support, dealing damage while granting a HP barrier, strong general mitigation buffs, fills your team's limit burst gauges, and the HP regen. And in terms of damage, according to this list I found on the internet, apparently she's just a bit weaker than Tifa, the Neo Vision Awakened one. Which I could take some time to confirm, but the picture's kinda funny, so I'll leave it at that. But don't write her off just yet. Her normal attack is actually steel. So yeah, top tier in my book. After the premium Yuna and the non-premium Riku, Final Fantasy X decides to strike a balance by bringing in the premium Auron without the premium CG limit burst. He's a very original Sephiroth that plays like a wind Sephiroth, but to make things more interesting, he can't chain at all. To compensate, his best attacks are finishing blows, ensuring that his damage doesn't drop off as drastically while waiting for his super limit burst, a devastating wind attack that takes advantage of a katana imperil and killer buffs. He can also serve as a very, very good breaker with 70% attack and magic breaks. And they're on separate abilities, because people were upset that Sephiroth only knew 4 moves. Once Final Fantasy X passes over and the winter season really starts, it's only fitting to introduce the Summer Gunner. Physalis is a magical damage dealer with water and ice attacks that chain with Bolting Strike and Chaos Wave Awaken, though she really excels at water. If you haven't read the small numbers, just look at her limit bursts, which dish out significant levels of water damage. Of course, since it'll be the middle of winter by then, we should see more summer units. Mermaid Frisia appears in a mermaid costume, and what first appears to be a practical joke turns out to be a sight to behold. She has some niche killers and mitigation effects, and for whatever reason, her impressive support ability has a 4-turn duration but is stuck on a 10-turn cooldown. But even if that's not available, she can still buff wind, show off her varied magic spells, and then blows all of that out of the water with an astounding wind support super limit burst. High stat buffs, high amplification buffs, high limit burst damage buffs, just make sure to bring along an imperil. We then interrupt the summer and winter thing to bring in Season 4. Hyvas appears with fire and ice Bolting Strike chains, though he's much better at fire. This is quite clear of his devastating super limit burst, which brings in strong greatsword imperils, defense breaks, fire imperils, and the CG limit burst with big damage. What's not to love? With the overwhelming masculinity of CG Hyvas, it only makes sense to follow that up with Swimsuit Shinju on a kitty floaty. Like her previous iterations, she's an earth damage dealer, but this time she's magical, not physical. A simple unit with a simple playstyle, she buffs her earth damage to do some powerful hits, slapping enemies silly with her super limit burst. After whatever that was, we return to more Final Fantasy V, with a Neo Vision Lena. Taking a break from being a stupendous healer, we see her become a magical damage dealer. You get some interesting callbacks in Neo Vision Ferris, with attacks that can chain with Graviton Cannon and Chaos Wave Awaken. But unlike Ferris, she doesn't have a CG limit burst. And to make matters worse, her Fire Evoke limit burst has a cost of 138 crystals. Luckily, by leveling it up, you bring the cost down to a more acceptable 60, but they really wanted to set that number high, didn't they? The limit burst looks nice, with a powerful re-raise and an additional field effect, but maintaining that buff might be difficult. She's also got some nifty passives, with access to light, earth, and wind field effects. Activate her Brave Shift, and she gets the chain of Absolute Mirror of Equity. Her limit burst is nothing to scoff at either, inflicting a whopping 140% wind imperil, alongside an 86% full break. But Final Fantasy V doesn't end there, as there is a plethora of major characters that haven't yet received a Neo Vision form. So who's next? Is it Wolfman? No, we have one now, so now it's time for another human. It's Dorgen. He's a physical damage dealer that can chain with Absolute Mirror of Equity or Graviton Cannon, and also packs a good Odin Trust. Despite having wind attacks, he's a better fit for lightning, with powerful limit bursts that supply their own buffs. After the excellent CG Limit Burst of Season 4 Sephiroth, players were hyped for the next Season 4 character, expecting a CG Limit Burst on the same, if not better level. But Tulian just kind of showed up, and that was about it. He's a debuffer that can use fire or earth boating strike chains, though as you can see from his Limit Burst, he greatly prefers earth. As far as debuffers goes, his breaks aren't anything extraordinary, but his 145% earth Impero certainly is. Too bad there's no CG Limit Burst to keep things interesting though. Collaborations continue with Xenogears. Here we've got Id, who's a fire physical damage dealer that can chain with absolute mirror of equity. And though the base form is a fine fire damage dealer, we want him to surpass his limits with his Brave Shift. He unlocks lightning attacks in the temporary form because thank goodness for that, though of course he still mains fire. He's got some interesting passives too, one that gradually boosts his damage modifiers automatically, and the second which straight up boosts his attack by 1000% when he's not holding anything. And while this does come with its own drawbacks, it also ignores the cap by giving him 1000% attack. So who really cares about the finer details when you have big robots with big numbers? Continuing the Xenogears collaboration, we've got Groth. He's really interesting. His base form has only like 2 attacks, but to compensate, he likes to monologue. This quirky feature lets him shout Japanese words, which in turn makes him stronger, a cultural phenomenon that makes Japan one of the most feared countries in the entire world. With access to water and earth imbues, you'll find that he only really sticks with earth, but that doesn't really matter when you have everyone's favorite tactic, big number buffs. With 1000% attack, the man makes you feel really silly for thinking of spending all that Lapis for weak fleshy meat men, when you could be spending that Lapis on big robot armor. But with such ridiculous units, how on earth does the Japanese version of the game convince people to keep spending after something like that? Why? With CG Limit Burst that prey on nostalgia. From the long-forgotten game of Final Fantasy IV, Kane finally makes his appearance, as a lightning jumper that likes to jump. With a Grandest ability that amplifies his damage, raises his attack, and straight up clears any cooldowns, Kane has the option of crashing down like thunder, or using his true Brave Shift and blinding enemies with light. Both forms are perfectly viable, though personally I prefer the base form sprite. But speaking of more units with awesome sprites, here's Rydia. Her base form can quadruple cast any of these 3 spells, though the Limit Burst kind of leans towards ice. And that's because she does, because once you unlock the best part of most evoke damage dealers, their Brave Shift, you get to see her ice evoke damage in all its glory. She also has field effects of her own, though these ones boost stats. We interrupt Final Fantasy IV to bring in another collaboration, this time with Sinnoh Alice. Though apparently in Japan it's pronounced like Shino? Well, regardless, no Neovisions here, but we didn't get that collaboration before, so maybe we'll get them now? Either way, I just introduced this to raise people's expectations, don't mind me. Back to Final Fantasy IV, it's Edge. He has the ability that lets your team evade attacks, but that's too useful, so let's focus on escape and throw here instead. He's a breaker that tries his best to go unnoticed like a ninja, with average breaks and a one-time 85% offensive break and 88% spirit break. And while his grandest abilities are one use only, at least the damage modifier buff is permanent, which just means you really don't want him to die. Anyways, he's got 3 different angles: fire and water with Boating Strike, or lightning with Absolute Mirror of Equity. If you take a look at the Imperos, you might be able to guess he likes to main lightning, and you'd be right. With a lightning super limit burst of an 87% full break and a whopping 145% lightning Impero, Edge has all the tools he needs to be just as strong as Sora from Kingdom Hearts 3. And right now I don't really care about fact checking this myself, but really? Can any Japanese players confirm this? And with that concluding Final Fantasy IV, now we move back to Season 4 of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. First we see Lefsha. She's got support, with machine and human killers, that super convenient 4-turn ability on a 10-turn cooldown, the ability to let your team chain of Oreo Ray, a fire imbue, amplification, and resistance buff, and the essentials bundle of white and green magic. Her passives are also quite something, with the chance to continuously grant your team resistance to breaks, so long as they're hit by attacks that can be countered. Her limit bursts are supportive in nature, buffing your team's stats, their limit burst damage, imbuing fire onto them, and amplifying that damage. The next unit from Season 4 is Havu. He also has support. Here we have a strong human killer, the ever-useful tag team of Provoke and Escape, a 10-turn cooldown ability that dispels your team, throws an 80% attack and magic break onto them, and, wait for it, buffs their defensive stats by 100%. Admittedly, the long-term tactical applications of this approach is currently beyond my small brain power, but I do see some abilities that make my brain happy. Team resistance to status ailments, stop, and charm, a big MP regen, Plant and Reaper killers, Full Breaks, Dark Imperos, and green magic that imbue and amplify Earth and Dark for your team. His limit bursts are much more impressive. 87% Full Breaks, 4 different Imperos, damage, and gives your team evasion. And then there's another Season 4 character. It's Runda. This one's a free physical tank who does a very good job at being a standard physical tank. There's stat buffs, mitigation, provoke, offensive breaks, all the basic essentials. There's also 3 elemental resistance buffs, and while they're at high percentages, you can't retain them with just Runda. Still, Runda is a pretty cool free unit, especially with those limit bursts of high mitigation and big limit burst crystals. For the haters of Rain, here's a concept sure to change your tune. Edge Rain. In an attempt to stand out, he goes with magic dark damage, though it's really the passives here that catch your eye. With his Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equipped, let's give him all these killers. And to capitalize on all these is a super shiny premium super limit burst, cementing him as one of the strongest units in the game. President Reagan becomes a thing and shows up as a breaker. He's got some fairly standard abilities like your Provoke and Full Break, but he also brings Light and Fire Chains. He's better suited for Light though, with limit bursts of 87% breaks, big Light Imperos, and Demon Killers. Still, while he has some nice tools, he's still primarily a breaker, so his damage comes nowhere close to Edgelord Rain. But even though we have absolutely perfect units like Underboob Rain and Nyx Emperor Reagan, we need a third and final unit to fulfill the integrity of the strongest shape on Earth. The Rhombicosid Dodeca, yeah, let's just go with triangles. Presenting your Lord and Savior Riser, a unit that not only embodies the very spirit of all that is holy in the world, but is also free. A fire physical damage dealer that can chain with absolute mirror of equity. He not only beat every other low rarity unit in the popularity poll, but has the overwhelming generosity to let a number of them have a row in his self-chaining limit burst. Also, just look at his super limit burst. Riser, no! Axstar the Breaker also becomes a thing, but he's basically Reagan but dark, and he's not the president either. Fina appears in a cute hoodie. She packs 3 different killer buffs for your team, another 10-turn cooldown ability carried by super limit burst, light support with elemental resistance, a supportive pack for white and green magic, an area effect for even more damage, and some fancy schmancy support limit bursts. Notably, she can buff your team's stats by 400% and their light damage by 45%. And in order to set herself apart from the one that was given away for free, her limit burst damage buff hits 300%. But she's still premium, so. The next Neo Vision unit is another Nico. He brings back some old abilities, like the ones that buff stats at the cost of others because the player base probably demanded it. But even though he's got some support, he's really here to flex his water magic damage. He also packs a lot of other black magic, though his real damage comes from his limit burst, which aside from bringing in the big damage also buffs the damage modifier for Flood for your team, which I think is pretty neat. But speaking of pretty neat, take a look at Sakura's new sprite. She shares some similarities with Nico, such as abilities that range from niche to Y, deals lightning magic damage with abilities and black magic, and showcases some powerful limit bursts. These ones buff the modifiers of the black magic burst, which is definitely useful for Sakura here, but that magic spell needs a bit more time to really proliferate like Flood. Hey, quick question. Did you think 10 Final Fantasy Brave Exvius units back to back was too much? No? Good, because we're going for 11. Here's the next premium unit, Knights of Grand Shout. Yes, that's actually their name. Their base form is pretty standard with light damage that's backed by incredibly strong passives, which also happens to carry their limit bursts. But hey, they're a combination of the Knights of Grand Shout. Surely we'll see more elemental variety in their Brave Shift. But that would be cool and super useful, so not on your life. Switch forms to get a second chaining family, and a limit burst that gets stronger with each use. I can't wait to see how this fits into canon. Finally, it's been way too long, cute dog incoming! Final Fantasy VIII finally gets new life in Good Boy and Rinoa. She's got a mitigation buff that you likely won't want to use, plus a bunch of other abilities and spells that seem to pop up because they remembered they existed. Her limit burst is a self-chaining attack that ultimately brings nothing else to the table, but it also puts the dog into CG limit burst. Did you get to go into CG limit burst? No! And that's why Angelo is better than Red 13. Oh, and Rinoa also has a Brave Shift that shifts the dark damage in this form, alongside an area effect that lowers dark resistance, and also brings back Apocalypse. Her limit burst in this form doesn't deal any damage, but it does massively raise the damage modifier for her attacks. Unfortunately, she faces pretty stiff competition in Mr. Bad Guy Rain, but she also has a dog. Look at this, it's so cute! You can't just introduce Final Fantasy VIII just to forget about it again. Here come two new units that really felt like they should have made an earlier appearance. Laguna here is a breaker with a number of tools. Multi-hits plus 2 stacks of evasion, a nice bundle of breaks that hopefully get better in Globo, and fire and water chains of Stardust Ray or Bolting Strike, respectively. And while he can use fire, he's really there for water, with Limit Bursts that throw on a gun imperil, breaks that hopefully get better, and strong levels of water imperils. And then these two also make their appearance. I have no idea who they are, really felt like they scraped the bottom of the Final Fantasy VIII barrel while missing those at the top, but the internet tells me their names are Kyros and Ward, so that's what we're going with. The pair's a physical damage dealer with strong levels of mitigation for whatever reason. I like this ability with a 10-turn cooldown that's also unavailable until turn 10, because if you ever get to that point then you must really be struggling. Regardless of how odd they seem, they pack an odd mix of buffs on their abilities. Their self-buff gives them strong killers and nice damage buffs, but nothing too different compared to past super limit bursts we've seen in this video. They've got self-chaining families that chain with Stardust Ray and Bolting Strike, but it seems like they're better off sticking with water for offense. And you might think maybe they have something cool in their limit bursts. And while they can self-chain and deal big damage, there's nothing too notable otherwise. There are high levels of general mitigation, but only for the pair here, so maybe they're meant to be used as a damage provoke tank or something. And finally, War of the Visions makes its return. There's a new Neo Vision Mont, who's primarily a physical tank with the necessary breaks and provoke. He also packs an automatic cover and showcases Protecta level 3, granting your team a 75% physical mitigation buff. He also has 3 powerful Grandis abilities, one that inflicts a sword in peril, another that removes all buffs, and a third that raises your team's elemental resistance by 100%. But the last one only lasts for a turn, and if you can only use these 3 abilities once per battle, it's a bit of a hard sell. The man also showcases his limit burst, which continually refuses to cross the 90% break line. Venera Thanos also appears in Japan. Her sprite does look different, denoting her change from dark to fire. She can still use dark, but her limit burst is primarily fire, so you get the idea. Change forms and you can see she still sticks with fire, and for whatever reason they still refuse to give out 90% breaks. Well, regardless, we've already seen Venera Thanos, so it's pretty unlikely that she'll suddenly become a fire damage dealer in Global anyways. And those were all the upcoming Neo Vision units that Japan has received. Keep in mind that the global version of the game gets its own original characters, like Roberta, who'll probably be delayed for Neo Vision Christmas unit that didn't win the popularity poll. I highly doubt the developers have the cojones to put out Neo Vision Eldrin II on top of revamping Neo Vision Eldrin I, so I'm going out on a limb and hoping for maybe Neo Vision Frisia. But if not her, someone new would be cool too. Hopefully they manage to turn out a CG limit burst somehow. Either way, thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Feel free to comment below. Do any of these Neo Vision units catch your eye? In my opinion, Riser's the only one worth chasing, but he's also free, which suddenly means there's no one I plan to focus on. There are also Neo Vision Awaken units, but aside from Slime, everyone else doesn't really have the sheer charisma to deserve any mention in this video. So I'm hoping they'll Neo Vision Awaken the regular Riser next.